The China Airlines Boeing 737 had just landed safely in Okinawa. As it slowly taxied toward the gate, no one on board could have imagined that a nightmare was about to begin. Suddenly, flames erupted from the right wing, spreading at a terrifying speed. Within seconds, thick black smoke engulfed the entire runway at Naha Airport. Panic broke out. Passengers scrambled to escape as the crew shouted for an emergency evacuation. But how could a routine landing turn into a fireball in just a matter of minutes? Was it a technical failure? Human error? Or was there something far more mysterious behind it? On the morning of August 20, 2007, at Taiwan's Taoyuan International Airport, a Boeing 737-809 sat quietly on the tarmac. As the ground engineers of China Airlines began their standard pre-flight inspection. It was a routine, familiar procedure, checking the fuselage, the hydraulic systems, the engines, and every piece of onboard electronics, all to ensure that everything was running perfectly before takeoff. Flight CAL-120 was a short-haul route connecting Taipei, Taiwan with Naha, Okinawa, Japan, one of China Airlines' regularly operated international services. It carried both business travelers and tourists, forming an important link in the airline's regional network. That morning's flight would be operated by a Boeing 737-809. Registration B18616. A narrow-body workhorse in China Airlines fleet. Designed for short and medium-haul routes, this aircraft was known for its efficiency and reliability. It was powered by two CFM International CFM56-7B26 jet engines, world-renowned for their durability, fuel economy, and low maintenance cost. The same engine type that powered the entire Boeing 737 next-generation family. By that time, aircraft B18616 had logged over 13,600 flight hours, thousands of takeoffs and landings. Just a month earlier, it had undergone a major scheduled maintenance check at a hangar in Naha, Okinawa. But during that inspection, a tiny mistake went unnoticed. A small washer securing the nut on the slat track assembly, a mechanism that controls the leading edge flaps, had been installed incorrectly. From the outside, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, no strange noises, no warnings. Everything appeared to be running perfectly fine. But that tiny, harmless-looking part, a simple washer meant to keep a nut from loosening during flight vibrations, would soon become the first link in a chain of events that no one could have ever predicted. Let's return to that morning's flight. The Boeing 737 was under the command of two experienced pilots. Captain Dujian Guo, 48 years old, a seasoned aviator with over 7,941 flight hours, including 3,823 hours specifically on the Boeing 737. Beside him sat First Officer Zheng Dai Wei, just 26, determined and full of energy, with 890 total flight hours, 182 of which were on this very aircraft type. Inside the cabin, 8 flight attendants from China Airlines moved swiftly through their routines, checking seatbelts, preparing the service carts, and overhead compartments, all in perfect rhythm as they prepared to welcome 157 passengers on board. Once everything was ready, the Boeing 737 slowly pushed back and began its taxi to the runway. 9:21 a.m. The twin CFM56 engines roared to life, spooling up to full thrust. The thunder of jet power echoed across the tarmac as the aircraft accelerated down the runway, lifted off, and climbed steadily into the morning sky, bound for Naha, Okinawa. Flight CAL-120 departed Taiwan in complete calm. The takeoff was smooth, no warning lights, no unusual sounds, no sign of trouble whatsoever. At 10:06 a.m., about 45 minutes after takeoff, the Boeing 737 entered Okinawa's airspace. The flight crew began their approach, carefully going through every step of the standard landing procedure, adjusting speed, maintaining a steady altitude, and establishing contact with Naha Airport's air traffic control. By 10:25 a.m., the aircraft started to descend. The flaps were extended to generate more lift and slow the plane down, while the landing gear lowered into position, ready for touchdown. Everything operated smoothly and precisely, just as it should. China Airlines 120, wind calm, cleared to land, runway 18. Roger, landing runway 18, China Airlines 120. Aligned perfectly with the runway, the Boeing 737 maintained a steady speed and touched down gently on the Naha runway. A textbook landing, everything appeared safe, ordinary, and under control. 2 minutes later, Flight CAL-120 began its slow taxi toward the gate. Inside the cockpit, the crew performed their routine post-landing checks. The aircraft was gradually being brought back to normal, flaps retracted, auxiliary controls locked, systems powered down one after another, a familiar sequence every pilot knows by heart. But in that moment of calm, when it all seemed routine, a serious problem was quietly beginning to emerge. Deep inside the structure of the right wing, a single stop bolt, part of the flap's guide mechanism, began to reveal the consequences of a mistake made long before. During a previous maintenance check, it had been installed in the wrong position. As the flaps moved, that misplaced bolt rubbed and scraped against nearby components until, finally, it pierced the wall of the auxiliary fuel tank. Almost instantly, fuel began to gush out. Some of that fuel began to pool around the wing root, dangerously close to engine number 2, an area of extreme heat, where even a single spark could turn the airplane into a massive fireball. The bolt in question belonged to the flap downstop assembly, a small but critical mechanism designed to prevent the flap's guide rods from moving beyond their limits during extension or retraction. A tiny part, but one essential to flight safety. Yet when installed incorrectly, it no longer acted as a safeguard. Instead, it became a sharp metal spike, driven straight into the thin aluminum skin of the fuel tank inside the wing. That tank, built from lightweight aluminum alloy, was strong enough to contain fuel pressure, but not to resist a metal bolt punching through from the inside. Inside the cockpit, the two pilots noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The Boeing 737 continued to taxi smoothly toward Gate 41, right in front of the international terminal. Once the engines were shut down, ground crew moved in to chock the wheels and prepare the stairs for passenger disembarkation. But just minutes after the aircraft came to a stop, the hidden danger made itself known. Fuel kept leaking, dripping directly onto engine number 2 beneath the right wing. A few ground staff spotted the strange liquid and reacted quickly, but it was too late. Moments later, the fuel ignited upon contact with the still-hot engine components. A violent burst of fire erupted, followed by thick black smoke billowing into the sky. Inside the cabin, no one yet realized that disaster had already begun. Many passengers had unfastened their seatbelts, standing up to open the overhead bins and retrieve their belongings. Down below, one technician suddenly noticed flames racing across the right wing. Panicked, he grabbed his radio and shouted through the static. "Fire! Fire on the right wing!" Looking out the cockpit window, the captain froze, his eyes fixed on the sight of dark smoke pouring furiously from the aircraft's right side. Without hesitation, the captain grabbed the intercom microphone. His firm voice echoed through the cabin. "Flight attendants, to your stations. Prepare to open the emergency exits." The emergency signal was triggered instantly. The once calm cabin erupted into chaos. Passengers leapt from their seats. Screams filled the air. In the cockpit, the captain activated the engine fire suppression system, hoping to cut off the flames from within. But it was useless. The fire was burning outside the engine casing, far beyond the reach of the extinguishing system. Every second, the situation grew more dangerous. Within minutes, Thick black smoke blanketed the entire ramp area and began drifting into the international terminal. From the control tower, air traffic controllers watched the scene unfold on surveillance monitors and immediately issued an emergency alert. The airport fire brigade was dispatched at once, sirens blaring as red trucks sped through the dense smoke. By that time, the flames had engulfed the right wing, raging furiously around engine number 2. Realizing the situation was out of control, the captain gave the only order left to give: evacuate immediately. Within seconds, the 4 main emergency exits burst open. The evacuation slides deployed and inflated in an instant. Flight attendants shouted evacuation commands while passengers surged toward the exits, panic spreading like wildfire. A race against time had begun, 165 lives against an inferno. At each exit, the flight attendants stood firm, guiding passengers down the slides in groups, urging everyone to stay calm and hold on tight. They prioritized children and the elderly, managing the flow to prevent chaos and keep the evacuation as smooth as possible. Across the terminal, stunned travelers pressed their faces to the thick glass, watching in disbelief as flames consumed the aircraft. The sound of metal cracking and popping echoed across the tarmac, creating a chilling soundtrack to the unfolding disaster. Some of the cabin windows began to shatter from the intense heat, releasing billows of dark smoke that poured into the sky above Naha Airport. Inside the aircraft, terrified screams filled the cabin. Despite the panic, the passengers had already moved into the aisles when the alarm sounded, allowing the crew to coordinate the evacuation efficiently. In less than 2 minutes, all 165 people, passengers and crew alike, had slid down the inflatable chutes to safety, escaping the burning Boeing just in time. Inside the burning Boeing 737, only 2 people remained, the captain and the first officer. The center fuselage was completely consumed by fire. Thick, toxic smoke poured into the cockpit, making every breath a struggle. Realizing they couldn't stay even a second longer, the 2 pilots decided to escape using the emergency rope through the cockpit window. The first officer went first, but just as he gripped the rope, a massive explosion tore through the air. Engine number 2 and the right-wing fuel tank erupted violently, shaking the aircraft as if it were being ripped apart. A giant fireball engulfed everything nearby, forcing ground crew and flight attendants, who had already evacuated, to run for their lives once more. The blast shockwave threw the first officer off the rope, sending him plummeting nearly 5 meters onto the concrete below. Miraculously, he was only dazed, and managed to get back on his feet moments later. The captain followed right after, but instead of using the rope, he leapt straight from the window, landing hard and sprinting away from the burning jet. At last, the fire trucks arrived, racing toward the inferno. A towering column of black smoke rose high into the Okinawa sky, visible from miles away. It took nearly an hour before firefighters could bring the blaze under control. When the smoke finally cleared, all that remained was the charred, twisted frame of the Boeing 737 at Gate 41. A haunting image of destruction. Yet amid the ashes, a miracle had taken place. All 165 people survived. The official investigation by the Japan Transport Safety Board reached its final conclusion. The direct cause of the fire was a small maintenance error, one so minor it could easily have been overlooked, yet serious enough to almost cost 165 lives. Specifically, a metal washer, whose job was to secure part of the mechanical assembly inside the right wing, had been installed incorrectly, or possibly left out altogether during a previous inspection. When the aircraft retracted its flaps after landing, the loosened mechanism slipped out of position, fell into the flap track housing, and was eventually forced through the wall of the auxiliary fuel tank. A tiny puncture formed, and fuel began to leak the moment the Boeing 737 came to a stop at the gate. Just minutes later, that leaking fuel reached the still red-hot engine components. And when the two met, the flames ignited, triggering the entire disaster. Investigators also noted a chilling possibility. If that washer and bolt had come loose while the aircraft was still in flight, the consequences would have been far more catastrophic. The flaps could have jammed or failed, throwing off the plane's aerodynamic balance, and in that case, CAL-120 might never have made its safe landing in Okinawa. In the world of aviation, disasters don't always begin with major failures. Sometimes, it takes only a tiny metal washer, a seemingly harmless mistake, to spark an unimaginable tragedy. The fire aboard China Airlines Flight 120 stands as a stark reminder of that truth. A single misplaced part, overlooked during maintenance, was enough to turn a massive jetliner into a fireball, just minutes after landing. Yet amid those raging flames, humanity shone through, the calm, courage, and sense of duty that define the very best in people. From the pilots and flight attendants to the ground technicians, all acted with bravery and chaos, fighting to save 165 lives. None of them knew if they would survive, yet each fulfilled their duty to the very end. That day, everyone made it home. And that, in the heart of what could have been an unspeakable tragedy, was the true miracle. The incident remains a powerful reminder to the entire aviation world. Safety is never something to be taken for granted. Every component, no matter how small, carries the weight of human life.